Welcome to episode 155 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by Allied Solutions. With over 40 years of experience in the financial services industry, Allied Solutions helps more than 4,000 clients grow or enhance their bottom line, protect their business and consumers, and evolve to stay ahead of the competition. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and this show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders that make the credit union movement so great. I could not be more excited for this conversation with my guest today. It's a return trip to the show. Teresa Freeborn is the former president and CEO of Xceed Financial Credit Union, the chair and co-founder of Smash and Tess. We will link all over to that as well. And now the author of a new book, Suits and Skirts, Game On, The Battle for Corporate Power. Welcome back to the show, my friend. Great to be here, Randy. Thank you for inviting me. I was so excited. And I have to say, before we jump into it, I was able to read I'm out of the country right now, but I was able to read the first chapter and the foreword to the book. Your daughter did an amazing job in the foreword, by the way. And I can't wait to get the book. Congratulations on the launch. Terrific. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to talk a bit about it today. And obviously, I'd like to just read the whole darn thing to you, but of course, that's not on. But a listening session, that'd be amazing. So I normally start asking guests about the background and like what got them to credit unions, and I'm sure we'll get into more of that, and people can also buy the book and find out more. But I'd like to start with the why. Why write this book, and why write it right now? Well, along with my day job over all these many years with credit unions, I've been working on and championing the advancement of women in leadership for decades. I mean, that has been one of my passions. And I mean, hell, I think I burned my bra in the 70s. So, we go way back to this comment. But quite frankly, to take a phrase from the old movie Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's kind of how I'm feeling today. And I'm seriously tired of hearing the statistics out there. Women have been seeking equity in terms of power for decades, but really to no avail. And every time I hear some little news headline that talks about how women are making progress, this is what really gets me fired up. Because if you call an increase in the Fortune 500, of 40 female CEOs over the course of 50 years, if that's a success, then I really do question your math skills, because think about it. One female CEO in 1971 to a grand total of 44, female CEOs in 2022. That's 50 years to get that kind of progress. And it's not an improvement. It's laughable. It's actually pathetic, and it's shameful. I'm frustrated. I can understand why. This is completely off the top of my head, but I thought in a conversation Jill and I were having, because that's a number that she always looks at as well. I think the number might have actually went down over the past couple of years too. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. There was something in the first chapter of the book. That's been the first chapter. I'm not sure where I saw it, but it was in your book. But this idea that like every male CEO board member, this book needs to be on their nightstand. Could you tell me, I guess, why? And I want to give you obviously the space here to talk about this, but often, I hate to say it, but people read books like themselves that kind of say that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so when I first saw the book, my natural, whatever you want to call it, was like, oh, this is a good book for women that are trying to become CEOs. And then I read that and I'm like, oh no, this is actually every male that is in a position of power should be reading this, or in leadership, right? Yes, it's interesting because I don't necessarily think the nightstand is necessarily the best place to put this book, because the book isn't going to make for some good bedtime reading, truly. It's actually going to agitate you, okay? So if you're a male and you're reading this, you're going to be agitated by it. So yeah, it's not sleep time, believe me. But my thesis it's quite simple. It's that it's men that are keeping women from attaining powerful C-suite and board positions. And it's to the detriment of a corporate bottom line. And the reasons vary, definitely. And the results, sadly, do not. Again, I'm going to question whether or not you're able to do the math here, but women are still very highly underrepresented in leadership roles. And I specifically directed this book to men, quite frankly, because first of all, I didn't see any other books out there doing it. And I'm really calling a spade a spade. And some might even say, maybe it's not soon enough that you're doing this. But, there are, as you mentioned, there are plenty of books out there for women, plenty of conferences, plenty of articles, plenty of symposiums. They're all designed to help women advance in corporate leadership. But it's time we talk to the men who are the real reasons
why women aren't advancing at the rate that they should. So I'm calling out men specifically here, very, very specifically. Take a look at some of the hard facts. I'm demanding that they reevaluate and acknowledge their behavior and become women's advocates instead of adversaries. And it's about change that quite frankly, only they can control. They got the power.
So where's the fear come from? Do you know, like, as far as like men are concerned, is it as simple as, I guess when I was putting this question together, I'm kind of like, it's kind of a dumb question. Is it literally just the fear of giving up power that we've quite honestly, as a almost 50-year-old white male, that we've just been given because it's happened for generations basically, right? Is there that fear that, if you get more power, that means I have to lose it, right? Like it's not I'm not a believer of that, but is that the fear?
Well, the fear of losing the power is absolutely real. I agree with you. That's sort of the first thing that would come to mind. But I'd also say that men aren't necessarily sure of how to interact with women in some senior leadership roles, right? And if they did, they'd probably do a better job of it. And they're not yet. So face it, men are used to the boys' club. Corporate America was made by men for men. They never envisioned women having a place in it. So in any of those senior ranks, think about it. So change is just really difficult to make for them. So I think it's sort of that combo. Yes, it's fear, but it's also, oh my goodness, I wouldn't even know what to do if I had to change it. How do I do that? Everything's so ingrained.
Why they should read the book. Again, when I was thinking about our conversation, this is something that I kind of want to call out our industry that we've both loved being a part of for many years out a little bit. We tend to love to tell that teller to CEO story in credit unions. And I've heard it many times over, this idea that like half of credit union CEOs are women. But when you start to look at the $1 billion shops, that number drops. And I don't know the exact number, but my guess is it's not too much different than the Fortune 500 companies as far as a ratio goes. What do we need to do to create equity today, to stop talking about it? Because I do feel like our industry talks about it a lot. But what do we need to do to actually change that? Like put our money where our mouth is, right? Like where the numbers actually start showing too.
Well, and first I'll say, Randy, you've absolutely just repeated the same old script. Everything you said is exactly what we keep saying, right? So in other words, when are we going to start to see the change? So two things that come to my mind. First of all, it's well understood that the majority of financial services employees are women. Like if you look at a bank or a credit union, that's what you're going to see. Say 75%, 70% are women. But as you move through those increasingly responsible roles, getting to the executive suite, guess what? That percentage starts to shift. So wouldn't it stand to reason that the percentage of your management ranks would kind of reflect your workforce? I mean, there's the first thing you need to think about, right? So that comes to mind. And yes, the majority of credit unions are run by women. So we have one up over a lot of the banks here. But as you said, the larger the credit union, the more likely you're going to see men at that senior level, not women anymore. And I have referred to this in the past as the pink ghetto. Now, I'm not trying to diss any of the great work that women do running those smaller credit unions. Thank God they're there. They do amazing, amazing work. But the reality is the smaller the credit union, the smaller the compensation package. And quite frankly, men simply won't work for those pay rates. So thank God those women are there, right? So think about that. That's always in the back of my mind. So your question about how to make change now, like today, enough of this already. So I think to start with, though, men have to really see the value in helping women achieve that gender equality in leadership. Since men have the power, they have to actually do something about it in a real substantive and concrete way. And since they have that power, it's men who have to use their power and their privilege because they have all of this control. Don't forget, no one else has this control. They do. But they have to do this to support and advocate for women. And it starts with a commitment. But then I guess what I could do is say, why don't you just read chapter 6 of the book? And it goes into great detail about everything you should do to make this kind of change. And a lot of it is pretty simple to grasp. It's just about the commitment and constant awareness of the problem so you can actually make this kind of change.
For the well-intentioned guy out there who's listening today, hasn't had a chance to buy the book yet, but hopefully will. What are the blind spots that we have? If we are like, no, we're all for it, right? Like we're all for women and
I love it. You're such a Gen Xer, and I love that you're raising this very question because there's a very large percentage of men who really want to be progressive and they really want to be supportive. Okay. So I'm not suggesting that doesn't exist out there. That does. They want to be part of the solution. So what I would suggest is, make sure your actions complement your words. So I'm going to give you an example. I spoke at a conference a couple of months ago. It was primarily women because, of course, it was about advancing women in leadership, and that's who attends these. So I'm talking to the women. There's a couple of guys in the room, maybe, half a dozen to a dozen at the most. And I did my whole presentation, felt really comfortable about it, said some pretty provocative things that got everyone thinking. And this guy comes up at the end of the session and he says to me, look, I'm in my mid-40s. I've always considered myself to be a big supporter of women. I have 2 daughters. I want everything for them as I do, for me. And if I had sons, I'd want that. But no, I want this for my daughters. But he says, as I'm listening to your remarks, I'm realizing that I resemble those remarks. Like I don't even know of it. It's unintentional. I don't know that I have harbored all of these feelings about women in leadership roles all these years. And you've just turned on a big bright light. Thank you. And to me, that was just the perfect example of a guy that you're describing here. It's about those blind spots. It was truly a blind spot. Now, I'll give you one piece of advice that I think guys can also take advantage of here. When you have control over hiring for a senior position, so you're a CEO of a credit union, you have a control over hiring, and you tell a recruiter that you want to ensure, in fact, you even want to demand that there be women candidates in those senior post candidacies. Don't follow it with the old comment that I hear all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to be choosing the best person for the job. Quite frankly, that is a get out of jail free card as far as I'm concerned. And in those instances where you can actually control the outcome, you can make that hire, make a commitment to improving that ratio of women leaders in your organization. It's going to feel like affirmative action. Okay. It's going to feel like that. But I got to tell you, we've got so much work to do to create that diversity and that balance in gender representation at those senior levels that it's going to be necessary to feel that for a while until you get up to those levels. So that's one of the things I would say.
Sounds like what you're saying. You have to be intentional, right? It's not just going to happen just because we
Yes.
hope it does, right? Something you just said, started making me think of something else I read in the first chapter. And it was the idea that you put a lot of data in this book. So I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask so that you can put it out there in the world. Why did you feel the need with all of your experience to actually load up the book with data and not just trust me, I've done this for a lot of years?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're reading my mind here. And I really just wanted to make sure that the men reading this book understood that what I discuss in the book is based on fact. It's not just Teresa's opinion. Okay. It is happening. And the data proves that it is happening. So it's about saying you can't blow any holes in any of this. You can't. It's all founded in research. I even went out and did primary research. I actually did my own online survey because I wanted to take it another step and say, are you sure, Teresa, that this is exactly what people are feeling out there? And yes, it validated it. So there's nowhere to hide. It's kind of what I'm saying. There's nowhere to hide in this.
I love that. This scratch my own itch question right here just popped into my head. So I have you, so I'm going to ask you. Was there anything while you were doing the research and writing this book that surprised you?
No, I'm going to say that pretty candidly. And the reason is because I have been on this track for decades. I've been saying these things and promoting these things and talking to groups and involved in networks and speaking at symposiums and doing all this for so long. And then when I finally had the time to actually put it down on paper, it just all came so easily to me because I've been professing these things forever. So when I did the research and I started backing it up, because I was saying, I can't say this unless I can find this. So of course I'm digging to find who else has said this kind of thing. And sure enough, it all exists. I mean, there's not really new thoughts out there. What's missing are the new strategies. But so anyway, I did spend a lot of time just making sure that it was validated so that guys couldn't poke holes in it. That's simple. It's fact.
It's fact. We like facts. That for the CEO or board member who's listening today, is there a piece of data that you would like stuck in their head? If they're listening, they have maybe, whether it's reading the book or from this conversation today, is there something that you hope that if there was one thing they had to walk away with from a data standpoint, what would it be?
First off, I'd like them to really get to know and understand their own diversity stats within their shop. Okay. Because if they actually did do that kind of analysis, they're going to stop telling me that we don't have a problem, because that's what I hear as I approach men CEOs in our industry is they constantly say, well, that's not here. Look, Teresa, I mean, you made it to these levels of management. Where's the problem? I've got 2 women on my executive team. But if you start to really take a hard look and do the math, you're going to find that no, it's not the way it should be. It's not represented the way it should. And oh, by the way, can you start rereading all of those reviews, those academic papers, those reports, those study findings that prove over and over and over again that involving women in leadership and decision making is really good for your business. Good for your business. Women on boards and in C-suites actually boost your business. Gender diverse companies outperform others by 15%. I mean, it is proven. So please, can you just reread all that? That's what I would ask CEOs to do today.
All I have to say is that we hired our CEO, Lauren, 3.5 years ago, and she's doubled the size of CUInsight in 3.5 years. So you talk about I get scared to say that because I'm afraid people are going to try to steal her, but wherever she can go, I support her fully. So I hope she stays with us forever. I'd like to, kind of a few general leadership questions that, I'm sure still will tie very well into the book. But, for many listeners out there, and maybe the last time you were on the show, I hear it often after the show. It's people love listening to somebody who's been there and done it, made it to the CEO office, got that chair. What advice do you have for the listener who would like to get there? And has that changed as you've stepped away at all? I guess there's so many rabbit holes I would go down here, because it had to be like you said, when you were the CEO, when you're raising your family, when you're doing all that, you're busy, and then you retire. I'm doing air quotes, and you have the space to actually write this book. Would the advice that you gave 2 or 3 years ago to an up and coming leader be the same as what it is today?
Well, I've had a chance to reflect on that, Randy. So thank you for asking that kind of question, because when I think about what were those big investments I made? What were those things that I did in my career that I would say, yeah, bang on. Thank God I did that. And I think first was completing my MBA. Okay. That was really important to get those bona fides credentials in place, because it was easy to say, oh, well, I don't really need that. And look at me, I'm progressing anyway. But no, critical. It was a validation for me. I learned so much from it. And then I got the credential for it. So it's fantastic. The other thing, I know we kidded about it before, and that is, you think about what Warren Buffett said it, and he said that, he took a Dale Carnegie course. I too took a Dale Carnegie course. Didn't we all? I mean, I did too. And I mean, can you hear me in the back? I mean, isn't that the dead giveaway of anyone that's taken one of those courses? But I still think it's important, because it kind of made me really push myself in places that I hadn't pushed before. And I liked that. I liked that it was making me more bold. But I think that this is perhaps more general, but learning at a very early stage of my career to put my hand up and volunteer for anything. Okay, new projects, be on a committee, be on a task force. I'll write that paper. I'll do this. And doing that, knowing that I was scared as hell to do it. But man, I learned so much from it, and I learned so fast. It was just put yourself in a hot seat for a while, and it was great. So I think that's push yourself, I guess is my advice.
Okay. So another scratch my own itch question here that just popped into my head when you said that. So you raise your hand, you do the work, you write the paper. How do you make sure you're getting credit for it and somebody's not stealing the credit?
Well, that has happened in my career for sure. But again, it's about being bold, and it's about standing up for that. And women don't intuitively sort of do that. They don't rise to that, right? They kind of wait for someone to give them those accolades versus bragging about them. So there's sort of this balance that we're doing. It's constant. But I think that if you put your hand up and everybody knows that, oh, she took the lead on that. Now, a lot of the guys in the room were always, because mostly it was men. And as I was working my way up, it was always mostly men, a couple of women. But what I did find is that they'd be so eager for me to take the role. Yeah, make her the chair. Make her make that and do that, because I was going to do all the heavy lifting and the work. So there's a price you pay for that. But if they see that you're actually producing this, and you're bringing them together, and you're putting forward some, hypotheses, they're proud to be part of that and they will speak your accolades. Trust me. I mean, that's how it works. But you sure have to do a lot of heavy lifting. There's no question. There's no easy way to get that kind of recognition. No.
So as mentioned earlier, I'm proud Gen Xer here, pushing 50. I was thinking back when I was thinking about this conversation and reading your book about how the books that maybe we grew up on, the business books, many of them, I guess they seem dated at this point. How about that? So my question to you is like, what makes a good leader today? Like, what does it take to be a great CEO today? Because I think I've seen the research or heard the research. It's that idea of like biases we maybe all have. If you say the word CEO, what we picture in our head might not look like you. So what does that great CEO look like, or not look like, but what does it take to be one?
Well, it's interesting as you talk about business leaders or mentors and that sort of thing that we've had in the past, books that we've read. And I think that my guru in the early years was none other than Tom Peters. Okay. Now understand, I came up through the marketing and communications side of the house. And I remember seeing Peters live and watching him pace back and forth across the stage, like super energized. And he was telling us that the key to leadership was the effective communication of a story. So of course, how validating to a marketing and communications professional, right? I thought, he's talking my language here. And what he said really, really did resonate with me all these years. So we're talking about going back to the early aughts when he talked about this, right? So it stayed with me all of my career. And, you know, he talked about what he saw was the neglect of those who are perhaps most fit to lead, women. Now, imagine saying this in 2000, 2002, whenever I saw him. And I listened and I paid attention to that. And I thought, this is really something. And it was kind of, I just sort of hung everything on that. And I think he called it America's competitive secret at the time. I mean, it was like one of those sort of very profound things he said. And he talked about the necessity of leadership attributes like sensitivity and empathy and patience and ability to do many things simultaneously, a penchant for long-term planning, negotiating, cooperating, reaching consensus. Funny, those kind of all sound like female leadership attributes to me that today's world really does need much more of. So that's what I would say. Funny how those women's leadership attributes are really what we need today in business. That's what I believe.
You know, one thing that struck me from, reading the part of the book that I was able to was how many women, it struck me, but it didn't surprise me. How about that? Feel like they need to leave an organization to advance in their career. And I guess that seems, I mean, in a world of talent shortages, that it seems when you're losing your best employees because they feel like they're hitting a ceiling to go someplace else, that just seems like bad business, quite honestly. What advice do you have for the person who is listening today that's like, this all sounds good, but you know what? I'm undervalued today where I am. And, I am butting up against a brick wall in my career right now. What advice would you have?
I can't tell you how many times I've heard from women that are trying to progress in their career that have hit that same wall that you describe. And I guess my advice has always been the same. And that is if your credit union or your company is not valuing you, or you do not see this chance of upward mobility, or if you don't see a chance to earn what your male counterparts are earning, if you don't see any of that in your corporation, get out and move on. I mean, it's like, be bold and do that. There are plenty of jobs out there that will respect you and give you what you justly deserve. And if companies and credit unions do not learn how to integrate women into the top of their organizations, then we women will leave and start our own companies. Okay. Don't kid yourself. It's happening every day, and more so during COVID. It was the big exposure is like, wait a sec. I don't think I'm happy. I don't think I'm happy with the progress I'm making. I'm going to go do it myself. And they do.
That's an interesting question, or brings up an interesting question. It's one that I've been asking on the podcast here, is this idea of like what work looks like. It doesn't necessarily, I think we used to think of work as more of a physical place than it was the career, in your, again, air quotes, retirement while you're out doing all of this. You're also continuing to work with your daughter to build Smash and Tess. Her career probably looks different than yours did starting out, I'm assuming, just, making the assumption. What do you think you just mentioned that during the pandemic, it was exposed where many women were like, yeah, no, I'm not doing it like this anymore. What does a career in credit unions look like to you going forward if we want to stay relevant and competitive?
I actually think it's a kind of a good news story. So first off, thank you for recognizing earlier that my daughter, she's the Smash to my Tess. It's a mother and daughter company.
I have to say that I was on a run when I was thinking about some questions, and I was like, I know you're the Tess and Smash and Tess, but I'm like, you've smashed through a lot of brick walls in your career too, so you could be a Smash also. So.
A double entendre. Smash
Right.
is a very affectionate nickname for my very clumsy daughter when she was young. So we called her Smash or Crash. So it was perfect. But anyway, and she did an amazing job of the forward in the book. And how many authors get to have their daughter write that forward? I was very, very, very pleased and very humbled, and it was just lovely. But anyway, you pose a really interesting question. What does work look like? Oh my goodness. The way we work just doesn't seem to feel the same as it did when we all showed up in the office Monday to Friday. I mean, that's been my whole career. Think about it, other than the last couple of years. So going forward, I'm not sure that the actual credit union career is going to change in a major way, but I think that due to this advent of more sort of work from home, work remotely, which everyone gets to do today, that's what I'm feeling, right? It's going to expose more men to the nitty gritty of truly running a household and raising a family while you're climbing your career. So think about it. That's going to eventually start to change that whole work family equation for men and women. And we simply have to reach a place where men truly share a parental responsibility, or will never achieve that gender equity in the workplace. And I believe that this has been the biggest problem we've had. Men are now really being exposed to what that feels like. And it's horrendous. It's a big responsibility. And women have to do that plus want to still advance in their career. So now guys are now starting to think, I'm going to have the same. I get it now. I get what this big workload is all about. And I want to share it with my wife. I want to share it with my partner. I want to help them progress just like I'm progressing. So I think it might switch that. It might be a wonderful little, way to change things up and put us on a better course. So
there's just so many questions there. I have to ask one. In your career, was there any hacks that you came up with as far as you had young children at home while you were advancing in your career as well? Like from a support, I mean, like supporting your career, is there, when that is exposed, and it has been over the past few years, any, I guess, hacks on how to create that balance at home as well to make sure that, yes, you're still able to do your job and still able to be part of the family as well?
Well, it comes with a bit of history for me because I've always been a multitasker. I've always had my fingers in all sorts of pies. But at one point in time, I actually had a nanny placement agency while I was working and building my career. And the reason I did it is because I decided at an early stage, once my son was about to be born, that I needed to hire a nanny. And then I started doing the research and realized, wait a second, there's nothing in here that talks about helping the working woman. It was all about being affluent. You can have a nanny. So I was thinking Mary Poppins, that you had to be extremely wealthy. And then you hire someone to help you do all the things at home that you want done so you can go and work. So here's the thing. What I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to come home at the end of the day, do bath time with my kids, read them stories, do homework, share some special time with those littles, as I call them. And so then I did the math and I realized it was completely uneconomical. It was like taking 70% of my take home pay. Think about that, 70%. However, my rationale was that I still had places to go in my career and I have to consider it an investment. So I did. And it was a good investment. That's all I can say. I mean, it seems ridiculous and right thinking women are going to go, are you kidding? I couldn't afford that. But maybe you can if it's for a short period and you're really determined to make it a success, which I was. So that was kind of the only hack I can think of that would resonate.
It seems like men should make the sacrifice too, though. I mean, that's just...
Well, there's that. Yeah.
There's that too, right? So, over the past couple of years on the show, one of the things that I noticed is in credit unions, it's not necessarily the the inability to take action, but maybe across the board, it's the, having the ability to take the appropriate action. As leaders, we only have so many resources, so much time, so much everything. How do you prioritize where you're spending your time? And as you were growing your career, raising a family, very actively involved in our credit union movement nationally, any hacks for where you spent your energy and how to do it all?
Well, I think you know this. You're a busy guy too, and we only have so much bandwidth, right? So how do you prioritize? And I guess my first response is to spend my energy where I have the best chance of being not just successful, but being content, right? Feeling good about me, which in my case then fuels my energy level because I'm happy, right? I'm feeling successful and I happen to be one of those people that can juggle a heck of a lot of things. And of course you could quickly say, but yeah, that's your genetic makeup. But I feel I'm pretty deliberate about it. So I make sure I get the balance I need. I keep fit. I get a good night's sleep. I eat healthy. I keep my friends and family close to me. I'm a planner. I'm very conscious about everything I do. And I think you have to be. You can't just check out and just be super busy and do everything. You've got to keep all those, you got to juggle. You just have to juggle. And that's it. I guess I always feel the same way when somebody says to me, oh, you're so lucky. And I think, yeah, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Like you got to put something in to get something out here. So that's just kind of how I feel. It's about balance. And
the more intentional I am, the luckier I feel too. So the last question I had for you before we, move on to having a little fun, we still do the rapid fire questions like we did the last time you were on the show. But was there anything that you were hoping for me to ask you or that you wanted to get out in the world before we move on?
I would suggest that we just ask a question to the male listeners out there. Are you treating women in your company, your credit union, the way you would like your wife or daughter to be treated in their place of work? I ask you to just think about that question. That's probably how I'd leave that.
So for the rapid fire questions, it wouldn't be the CUInsight experience without them. The first one, and I had to make sure I had some new ones, so you just weren't I wasn't asking you the same things again. When was the last time that you were just truly amazed, either personally or professionally?
Oh, I think I might have to think about two levels. One is personal okay. Amazement. Every time I get in the same room with my grandchildren, I'm going to tell you, they're truly amazing. But I guess also the hole-in-one I got was pretty amazing too. So that was kind of fun. So
amazing.
I think professionally is when I got to hold my book, in my hands. Yeah. That was pretty amazing too. So
that seems pretty cool. I've never written a book, so that seems pretty cool.
You will write one day. I know you will.
I kind of circled on this earlier, but I'd still like to add it. And it was interesting in the forward of your book, in the very beginning of it, your daughter talked about at times growing up, sometimes she wished her mom was at more stuff. Like often us, who have kind of moved up let's call it the corporate ladder, it can come at the detriment of family life. So now that being said, I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Your daughter talking about though, when she realized when she was taking risks, the reason why was because she had an amazing example. What advice can you give for the listeners today about creating some of that I hate to use the word work-life balance, but just like that full life that does kind of have it all?
Yeah. And it's about being more mindful of it and truly knowing that you can do it all to an extent. You're not going to do everything really well, but you can do it all. And especially when you're juggling family and business, I'm not going to tell you that I wasn't distressed a lot of the time when I had small children and I was still trying to do everything else and go out for those business dinners and head across the country for meetings and overnights and always thinking about the kids at home and what was I going to do. And I often sort of look back now and I think the book I should have written was I worked and my kids turned out okay, like maybe right. So just all of that to say that there is hope. You can, but man, wouldn't it be easier if our partners that helped put these children on the planet were there to help as well and Absolutely. Be right there with you and focus just as much on their careers as your career. How about that?
Yep. Absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And do you remember who gave it to you?
Well, I'll have to say it was from my late dad who raised 4 daughters, no boys, just girls. So growing up in a family of all girls, we didn't know there was boy chores or girl chores, right? We just did everything, right? But, which is, I think was great. But his expression was always sort of go for it. Long before Nike said, just do it, my dad would say, go for it. And I think that's always stayed there. Like every time I'm wondering, should I do this? Shouldn't I? And it's always like, yeah, go for it. What the heck?
I love it. So I dig the idea of having a mission, not a job. Do you have a personal mission statement? I tweaked this. I added a word. What continues to make you do what you're doing today?
I kind of switched my mission statement a bit because I believe in them too, Randy. And I sort of shifted that slightly as I went into author mode. And I really want to put a lot more energy into this, more than I ever have. And that is to champion meaningful change in the advancement and respect of women in leadership roles. And that would be to create a better world. That's kind of what drives me. Yeah. I
absolutely love it. We'll link to your book, obviously, and I'm going to give a shout out again. Suits and Skirts, Game On, The Battle for Corporate Power. And I told you before we hit recording, actually, I mentioned that I talked to Lauren today, and we're going to be giving out copies at our next MiniCon event too. So what else are you currently reading? And is there, after people are done with your book, any other books that you feel like everyone should read?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when I finished the book, I don't know whether other authors feel the same way, but you're so focused on the book. So guess what? As soon as I had it in my hand, it was like, okay, I now can relax. And now I dove into fiction. I just wanted to do something frivolous. And I just completed Barbara Kingsolver's new book. It's called Demon Copperhead. And I'm going to tell you, I needed to get lost in something. I totally got lost in this.
You lost in that?
I needed to do that. I honestly did. I think I needed a break. So I'm reading nothing of a professional, in a professional sort of basis today.
Good for you. So this next question comes directly from NCUA Chairman Harper. Who plays Teresa in the movie biopic of your life?
Oh, a little esoteric, but let's go with Alicia Vikander.
Oh.
Only with blonde hair.
With blonde hair. There you go.
Yeah. She's smart. She's tough. She's bold. And she's hot. You know what I mean?
There you go. Perfect. I love it. I absolutely love it. I asked you this the first time you're on the show, but I did want to leave it in here. When you hear the word success, who comes to mind to you today?
I think some people would say, the likes of, like a Bill Gates or something like that. But I would say it's Melinda French Gates. And I would say that because she was this successful businesswoman in her own right, long before she met Bill. Okay. But she's now this global advocate for women and for young women and girls. I absolutely adore her. I adore everything she's doing. And yeah.
Amazing. That's for sure. Last question. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share or an ask of our listeners today?
Well, maybe we'll go full circle back and we'll direct this to the men. And I would like men to take this issue very seriously because it isn't just a cultural issue. It's a financial issue as well. So maybe I can appeal to them on the financial side of the house. Maybe I can do that. So when women are in leadership roles, companies make more money, period. So the men need to step it up or get out of the way. Okay? Because we're coming for your jobs if you don't. That's kind of how I want to leave it.
That is the perfect way to do it. I will add my own final thought, which is go buy Teresa's book. And I hope I get to see you keynoting stages talking about this as well. So I would say book Teresa also. And we will end with that. Thank you so much, my friend, for being on the show. I greatly appreciate you spending time. If people want to get a hold of you, I'm sure the email has probably changed since the last time you were on the show. What's the best way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, email? What's your poison?
I'm going to make it real easy. Teresa at teresafreeborn.com.
Oh, that's beautiful. Very nice. Impressive. We'll link to that and everything else in the show notes. I'm jealous of that email. Thank you again, my friend, today. Before we go, a few things. Make sure to check out Allied Solutions in the show notes. I appreciate their support. They allow me to have this much fun doing what I do. They've been a longtime partner of CUInsight.com in the podcast, so please check them out as well. Please also subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We're on them all. And if you're looking for Teresa's book or any of the other books that have been mentioned on the show, a quick Google of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and your next read is on its way from Amazon. Last but certainly not least, Teresa, thank you again, my friend. And I just have to thank everybody out there for listening. Y'all rock. I appreciate the kind words, and I hope to see you all soon.